Thank you for joining us today on EarthFile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. On the 4th of June, the United Nations announced the launch of the Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, a global movement that will bring together governments, businesses, civil societies, and private citizens in an unprecedented effort to heal the Earth. In a recorded message marking World Environment Day, the UN Secretary General said, "Luckily, the Earth is reliant, but she needs our help. We still have time to reverse the damage we have done." So today on EarthFile, we bring to you how some celebrated this year's World Environment Day and efforts they are making to restore our planet. Do stay with us. Every 3 seconds, the world loses enough forest to cover a football pitch, and over the last century, we have destroyed half of our wetlands. As much as 50% of our coral reefs have already been lost, and up to 90% of coral reefs could be lost by 2050, even if global warming is limited to an increase of 1.5 degrees centigrade. Ecosystem loss is depriving the world of carbon sinks, like forests and peatlands, at a time humanity can least afford it. Global greenhouse gas emissions have grown for 3 consecutive years, and the planet is on pace for potentially catastrophic climate change. The emergence of COVID-19 has also shown just how disastrous the consequences of ecosystem loss can be. By shrinking the area of natural habitat for animals, we have created ideal conditions for pathogens, including coronaviruses, to spread. With this big and challenging picture, the World Environment Day focused on the ecosystem restoration, and its theme is reimagine, recreate, restore.
By restoring ecosystems, we can drive a transformation that will contribute to the achievement of all the Sustainable Development Goals. The task is monumental. We need to replant and protect our forests. We need to clean up our rivers and seas, and we need to green our cities. Accomplishing these things will not only safeguard the planet's resources, it will create millions of new jobs by 2030, generate returns of over $7 trillion every year, and help eliminate poverty and hunger.
It is believed that between now and 2030, the restoration of 350 million hectares of degraded terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems could generate $9 trillion in ecosystem services. Restoration could also remove 13 to 26 gigatons of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. The economic benefits of such interventions exceed 9 times the cost of investment, whereas inaction is at least 3 times more costly than ecosystem restoration.
The United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is a global call to action. It will draw together political support, scientific research, and financial muscle to massively scale up restoration. And everyone can contribute. Science tells us these next 10 years are our final chance to avert a climate catastrophe, turn back the deadly tide of pollution, and end species loss. Today, let's start a new decade, one in which we finally make peace with nature and secure a better future for all.
It is believed that no other place needs more restoration than the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. It is one of the most polluted places on Earth. For decades, oil spills have been damaging the environment and devastating lives in this part of the country. It is reported that about 300 oil spills occur in the region each year, and in 2011, a spill at Shell's Bonga oil fields released 40,000 barrels. Over 350 farming communities were affected, and 30,000 fishermen were forced to abandon their livelihoods. On its part, the Port Harcourt Strategic Business Unit of the Department of Petroleum Resources came out to start a tree planting campaign in the region. The Department of Petroleum Resources is required to ensure that petroleum industry operators do not degrade the environment in the course of their operations.
Our agenda in celebrating this year's World Environment Day is also to create awareness, and that awareness we are cascading down not just within the cities but also in the rural areas. Some of these plants are common. Some of these plants, people are familiar with them. They are plants that you can actually get to if you look for them. Something like the aloe vera, so many people are aware of it. Something like the snake plants, people are aware of it. The rubber plant, we have the English ivy and all the rest of. Some are actually available, and because we are creating this awareness, we are using this opportunity to also let people know that there is need for us to do our own little bit in restoring the ecosystem. And doing that little bit, you can simply make these plants available around our homes, around our offices where we work, and every other places, so that the environment, the air, the environment where we are or where we are seen will make it cleaner and more healthier for us.
A persistent black soot has been observed in Port Harcourt and its environs since the last quarter of 2016 and has become an environmental issue for residents of the city, state and the country.
One of the challenges that we have identified that is bedeviling the Port Harcourt and its environment is this issue of black soot. And this occasion goes a long way to ameliorate that. Assuming these trees are planted and they have the capability and capacity of absorbing this pollutant, then our atmosphere and the air around us will be clean. We are also frowning against vehemently on the illegal activities that are taking place, the indiscriminate burning of the petroleum products that we have identified as the root cause for that environmental degradation. So government has also preparing itself to come up with a way of making the artisan refinery legal. Because as we speak, there are many illegal refining taking place around us.
Oil accounts for 70% of Nigeria's government earnings and 90% of foreign exchange in the Niger Delta. The region has been plagued by environmental pollution from oil spills, gas flares, and more recently, extreme heat.
One other advantage of what we are doing will do to the industry is that some of these plants can actually absorb those hydrocarbons, thereby making the environment clean. There's what we call phytoremediation. Some of them can actually be used for phytoremediation. You plant them and allow them do that job for you. They will take in those pollutants, absorb them, and the whole environment where these incidents or where these spills occur would have been taken care of.
Environmental experts say reviving natural carbon sinks, such as forests and peatlands, could help close the climate emission gap by 25% by 2030. Replanting with native tree species can also help buffer some of the expected devastation effect of a warming planet, such as increased risk of forest fires. Currently, 3.2 billion people, that is, 40% of the world's population, suffer from continued degradation of ecosystem. For example, by losing access to fertile soil or safe drinking water, a daily reality of the people in the Niger Delta region.
We will put in every effort we can to restore the ecosystem that is already degraded, that is already polluted, that has already been damaged, as well as preserve the ecosystem that is still intact. You will agree with me that there are still some parts of the ecosystem that are still intact. So while trying to restore the already degraded ones, we should as well try as much as possible to preserve the ones that are intact. Okay, now down here, part of our responsibility as a regulatory body in the HSC division is that we ensure that the environment where the activities of the oil and gas are being carried out are not degraded and are not polluted.
Excellent. Okay, give me that. Now you have to mash.
Back in Lagos, the general manager of the State Environmental Protection Agency joined children in planting trees. The event is one of the activities organized by members of the Young Africa Leaders Initiative under the auspices of the Mandela Washington Fellowship Alumni Association with the support of a public diplomacy grant of the United States Consulate General.
This tree planting underscores U.S. initiatives working in partnership with the Lagos state government in Nigeria to really underscore the importance of the environment. I think by showing these kids an opportunity that a lot of us didn't think about or have when we were kids to plant trees, it really sort of underscores both the commitment and their commitment, and in many ways it actually teaches their parents a lesson. So their parents and their friends unwittingly are now also involved in the environment. So this is really a great environment. These kids have such a bright future, and we're really glad to be a part of it today.
To mark the Environment Day, the Federal Ministry of Environment and the Osun State Government held an event in the state capital, Osogbo. The Ministry of Environment said the government is working to ensure that the environment is efficiently protected for the sake of humanity.
We will not fail to provide.
He said the federal government has also commenced the execution of nature-based programs and projects to address the challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss in view of their multiple benefits, which include, among others, climate amelioration, improved ecosystem services, enhanced water security, and enhanced food security.
No better time to reset our relation with nature than now. The entire world is being confronted with such enormous challenges that can be best described as unprecedented. The need for urgent collective step-up action by everyone, irrespective of social status, religion, and political leaning, for drastic restoration of our God-given natural ecosystem is crucial, while as government, we will not fail to provide every necessary support required to ensure that we are all in harmony with nature.
On his part, the state governor says Osun is making efforts to curb the activities of those degrading the state's lands.
The government of the state of Osun has commenced proactive steps aimed at addressing every very unlawful action of the ignorant citizens of the state and their collaborators in order to save our ecosystem and the environment. We are currently working hard to check the irrigation issues arising from ongoing mining activities. Our government frowns upon the affront of people who are in the habit of encroaching on our forest reserve by felling trees, setting fires on forests for farming purposes, as well as those engaging in indiscriminate waste disposal and pollution of the environment.
Experts say the well-being of the Nigerian population in the coming decades has been severely compromised and will to a great extent depend on conservation and restoration of ecosystems to maintain and enhance biodiversity and ecosystem services in order to contribute to sustainable support of the economy battered by COVID-19 global pandemic while reducing environment-related risks. Experts also believe the crucial challenge of the Niger Delta requires a post-petroleum economy through deep transformation in global production and consumption patterns. Therefore, they say ecosystem restoration requires concerted actions at local, national, and international levels, focusing on a pragmatic shift towards a sustainable decarbonized development pathway before it is too late. The triple threat of climate change, loss of nature, and pollution requires the world to deliver on its commitment to restore at least 1 billion degraded hectares of land in the next decade, an area about the size of China, states a new report released on the 3rd of June by the United Nations Environment Programme and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. The report is named Becoming Generation Restoration, Ecosystem Restoration for People, Nature and Climate. The report is also an urgent call for action to address the climate and biodiversity crisis.
Ecosystems face massive threats. Forests are being cleared, rivers and lakes polluted, wetlands and peatlands drained, Coasts and oceans are degraded and overfished, just to mention a few examples. Conservation of healthy ecosystems is essential, but it is not sufficient. We need to go beyond and restore all ecosystems that can be restored.
Ecosystems requiring urgent restoration include farmlands, forests, grasslands and savannas, mountains, peatlands, urban areas, fresh waters and oceans. Communities living across almost 2 billion of degraded hectares of land include some of the world's poorest and marginalized.
Ecosystems are degraded in alarming ways, and humanity is using about 1.6 times the amount of services that nature can provide sustainably to its survival. So definitely the conservation and the way we treat healthy ecosystems as of today is not enough. So we need to restore what we lost or what we have degraded, and we need to invest.
The Food and Agriculture Organization and the United Nations Environment Programme stressed that countries should consider building their post-COVID-19 recovery in a greener way.
COVID-19 pandemic has just reminded us that when we treat nature badly, well, there are consequences. And it is therefore an opportunity with the trillions of dollars and euros and Swiss francs that are coming on the market to accelerate the change and to build back differently, greener and restore our ecosystems.
This year's World Environment Day kicked off the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, a global mission to revive billions of hectares from forests to farmlands, from the top of the mountains to the depth of the sea. UNEP and the FAO are co-leading this global movement to reimagine, recreate, and restore ecosystems, which is crucial, particularly as countries strive to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic.
If we do this at the necessary scale, it will have benefits far beyond climate change and biodiversity. It will have benefits for food security, for health, for clean water, for jobs. Restoration can benefit all the sustainable development goals.
Actions that reverse degradation are necessary to meet the Paris Agreement target of keeping global temperature rise well below 2 degrees Celsius. Restoration, if combined with stopping further conversion of natural ecosystems, may help avoid 60% of expected biodiversity extinctions. Agroforestry alone has the potential to increase food security for 1.3 billion people, while investment in agriculture, mangrove protection and water management will help adapt to climate change, with benefit around 4 times the original investment.
In the last 30 years, we have lost an area of forest of 420 million hectares. That's the size of 2 countries, India and Nigeria combined. So we're currently still losing 10 million hectares a year. That's 2.5 times the size of Switzerland. That has to stop, and we can do that. The major reason for the deforestation varies across the world, but largely it's because of agricultural expansion.
UNEP and FAO estimate that global land restoration costs are to be at least $200 billion per year by 2030. The report outlines that every $1 invested in restoration creates up to $30 in economic benefits. While the need for terrestrial restoration is urgent, the coastal and marine protection is even more important for everyone's well-being.
2/3 of ocean ecosystems being already damaged, degraded, or modified. If we consider that this planet is about 70% ocean, then that is an enormous amount. But keep in mind that that also includes plastic pollution in the ocean, which is now so ubiquitous that it's very hard to avoid plastic, even in fish that we catch and eat. 1/3 of commercial marine fish populations are fished unsustainably. So this is a real risk to food security.
During her briefing to the World Environment Day virtual event, the head of the United Nations Environment Programme said, "We must strain every sinew to make this decade a success."
This is because we must stabilize the climate, protect nature, and stem pollution to create a world of prosperity, equality, and peace, as foreseen in the Sustainable Development Goals. Restoring ecosystems is a remarkable solution. It slows climate change. It brings back lost biodiversity. It creates land for agriculture, provides jobs, restores nature, and buffers us against zoonotic diseases and pandemics.
Nature and the ecological services it provides are free. We don't pay for fresh air, water, soil, or even the oil, gas, and other minerals below ground. What we pay for is the extraction, processing, production, and distribution of food, fuel, and materials the ecological services provide. Not forgetting the profit of those who exploit those services on our behalf. We also pay for pollution and waste and other inefficiencies that our own systems and services generate. Experts say what is amazing about nature is that if left to its own devices, those free ecological services are also renewable, unless we use them up faster than nature can replace them, which is what is happening now. 22nd of August 2020 marked the day by which we had consumed more from nature than the planet is able to renew in the whole year. According to Global Footprint Network, humanity is currently using nature 1.7 times faster than ecosystems can regenerate.
We're assigning a value to it as if it were something to be exchanged, we would be thinking about what the value would be. But I want to stress here beyond any doubt, there is absolutely no intent here to start making a market of nature. What we want is for us to be able, on the same basis of comparison, to see that when we do certain things for legitimate economic reasons, we may be having an effect on nature that is not as strongly positive as the economic effect of that activity. And if we can take that into account, then we realize that what looked to be an optimal economic activity before actually is way suboptimal, because it's generating all these losses of benefits and costs that we will have to confront sometime in the future at much greater cost than if we prevent the losses and damage from happening now. We now will understand the scope of the damage we're doing, and we can act in a considerate and rational way to reduce that damage. That is the point behind this.
I warmly welcome you all to the first informal virtual meeting of the 52nd session of the Statistical Commission.
The United Nations Statistical Commission at its 2021 session adopts a new system of accounting that links both economic and environment data. This ushers in a new era in how we measure prosperity and well-being, one that goes beyond the gross domestic product and makes the contributions of nature central to economic planning and decision-making.
The sixth meeting of the 46th session of the Statistical Commission is called to order.
Established in 1947, the Statistical Commission is the United Nations' highest decision-making body for international statistical activities. The Commission generally meets for a 4-day session in March every year, with participation of chief statisticians from United Nations member states, experts, policymakers, and the civil society.
After World War II, we developed a system of national accounts and the gross domestic product, GDP, to measure the economic recovery. We had the massive economic stimulus of the Marshall Plan to pull us back from the brink. Since then, we have always measured economic progress in terms of the goods and services we produce and consume. That is the gross domestic product, or GDP. But we never did that for nature. And yet, nature provides services that we value, that we need, that we cannot exist without. And we need to account for that value, those benefits, in measuring our progress. This time, after this crisis, the system is different. Our planet is broken, unlike after World War II. We need a transformation in economic thinking. The economy needs a bailout after COVID-19, but so too does nature, because we are on the very brink of climate and biological biodiversity disasters. We can no longer rely on GDP alone. It has considered the contribution of nature to be free and essentially limitless throughout its history. This new framework will put nature on the map. And as a result, just like we would never willingly and consciously do something to damage our GDP, so, hopefully soon, we will begin to think the same way about nature. We will be able to measure and value the benefits and services we gain from nature, and we all know that what we measure, we value, and what we value, we manage.
The United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration calls for stepping up efforts to prevent, halt, and reverse degradation of areas such as grasslands, forests, oceans, and mountains, essential to all life on Earth. This decade aims to prevent, halt, and reverse the degradation of ecosystems on every continent and in every ocean. It can help to end poverty, combat climate change, and prevent a mass extinction. But we only succeed if everyone plays a part. I'm Ayola Kasim, asking you to join us next week for another episode of the program. From all of us here in Lagos, it's bye for now.